What's up, guys? It's Friday morning. Sorry, I just gotta fix that. I'm gonna wait for everyone to join that's gonna join. We'll see how many people show up. I know that sometimes you guys can't show up live during this time. I know some of you are working, and that's totally fine. These will always be posted on YouTube. I try to wait until Wednesday's live and then Friday's live, and then I'll upload them all at once on YouTube. Hi, Rebecca, my long lost friend. I haven't talked to my assistant in 2 days. Hey guys, so you guys can ask whatever questions you want. I know you guys like somebody starts asking questions and then everybody else, but I thought until you guys ask questions, I'll kind of give you guys an update on Fully Nourished. So like I said in my last live, there's just a few things that I'm wrapping up. The videos are done, so Fully Nourished is going to be a full online course. It's not an ebook. A lot of people are like, when's your ebook going to be done? And I'm like, it's not an ebook, it's an e-course. And so there's lessons, there's modules, and then each lesson that comes with a video is going to have, whatever you need to kind of support what's in that video. So whether it's links, resources, PDFs, there's going to be a recipe book and nutrition guide, a supplement guide. So I'm finishing up the courses, or the videos are already done. So I'm just finishing up the recipe book. I just have one more section to do, the dessert section, because I got you, girl. And then I'm going to finish up the handouts, and then I just have to make the checkout page, and that is going to be all done. So I'm trying, like I said, I'm trying to get it done by my birthday, which is on Tuesday, but I'm not gonna rush it. I have a really bad habit of putting unrealistic expectations on myself, so I'm trying to refrain from saying this is the date it's going to be done. It's going to be done soon. It's not that much work to finish up, and I just kind of have to get it done. So I'm going to be working on it today, tomorrow, Sunday, and I'm hoping that by Monday I'll have some good news for you. Okay, so I have some questions coming in. I love seeing your guys' faces. I love that we have, you guys are all pretty much regulars that come to my live, which I love. Okay, so progesterone, best after ovulation, capsules or cream, and then best time to take. So progesterone is a relaxing hormone. It is it is a chill hormone. And so if you're taking pills and you can't really control the dosage, it's probably best to take it in the evening because it's gonna make you kind of tired. If you can kind of control the dose and take it in small amounts throughout the day, it can be really helpful for when actual estrogen dominance symptoms pick up. So let's say you have a day, that 5 days before you start your period, and you're starting to feel kind of exhausted and moody and irritable, you can pop some progesterone on real quick, and it usually helps you kind of get through the rest of your day. If you are taking a pill though, you can't really control the dosage, and so you kind of need to take it in the evening just so you don't feel like you want to sleep all day. And then it is best after ovulation, and the delivery is kind of what matters to you. I've had a couple people say that they don't absorb the progesterone from oral dosage very well, or pill dosage. Some people do an under the tongue tincture, and that works really well. Under the tongue or rubbed into the gums is going to be a really great delivery option because it's absorbed into the bloodstream very quickly. Creams are also really well absorbed. So it's just kind of what works for you. A lot of people have to kind of experiment and try it out until they're like, okay, this actually works a lot better for me. But I think whatever is most convenient to you. But yeah, once you ovulate, you take it all the way up until your period. What are your thoughts on alcohol in moderation? Alcohol is a poison, it's a toxin, and we have to see it as such. It just because something is legal and then something over here is illegal doesn't make them any, one less bad and one more bad. It is a legal substance, and we have to acknowledge that it is a poison that our body prioritizes to detoxify, because if it didn't, we would die. It would poison us. And so when we drink alcohol, our body is number one goal is to detoxify that alcohol, and everything else kind of goes to the wayside, including estrogen, including pesticides, any type of toxin. Your body is now prioritizing alcohol. On top of it, a lot of people are using it as a nightcap. They're using it in the evening, they're using it to wind down. This is gonna wreck your sleep, it's gonna wreck your blood sugar, and it's also gonna make your liver have to work to detoxify over the course of the night instead of doing what it wants to do, which is regenerate, restore, actually fix things in your body. Your body can't prioritize that any longer. It has to actually all through the night work on detoxifying alcohol. And so in moderation, I guess the word in moderation really is like one of those things where people are like, yeah, I'm just drinking like 1 drink a night, it's in moderation. I'm like, no. If you're talking about like in moderation, like 1 or 2 drinks on the weekend, cool. But if you really honestly have screwed up hormones and you're trying to heal, alcohol is just gonna hold you back. And so it's kind of one of those things where like, how many times a week do you want to hold yourself back? Unfortunately, and I don't mean that in like a rude, prude way. I just mean like it really serves you in no way. And if you're going to choose alcohol, I really recommend choosing like a red wine or some type of wine. Keep in mind that wine is super rich in pesticides. Grapes are heavily sprayed because they are very, very susceptible to bugs. And so even organic wine has pesticides on it because of the actual after spray of the non-organic vineyards next to it. And so it is best if you're regularly drinking to focus on drinking organic alcohol as much as possible, especially if it's wine, and or like hard alcohol is okay in moderation as well. But I never recommend drinking on an empty stomach. You always want to drink after you eat so that your blood sugar is not on a roller coaster, and it kind of helps your liver not have such a burden, because your liver does need sugar and protein to detoxify that alcohol. So overall, I know like it's real life. People are gonna drink, and I personally don't love alcohol, so to me it's like an easy, I don't even care, won't even drink, never drink. But for some people, I know that is something they enjoy, and it is something that's social, and they have to kind of figure out what works for them. But it is definitely like, I find that once we start digging in with my clients, even though they're not, I don't want to say like addicted to alcohol, they do start to realize it is a crutch. It's a crutch because they have social anxiety, or it's a crutch because they feel insecure, and having a drink in their hand makes them feel better. And so we start working out like, okay, well, if you feel more comfortable with a drink in your hand, go get a club soda and lime. No one knows that's not a vodka soda, and even though it doesn't matter what other people think, I think we still do care sometimes. And so it's like about starting to work on things that you can start to figure out like, I don't actually need alcohol. I feel better without it, and have the occasional drink. But you kind of have to decide what works for you. But I don't recommend drinking more than 2 drinks per week. And if you're struggling with ovulation, definitely not doing any alcohol during that follicular phase that might keep you from ovulating. So it definitely depends on what's going on. But I think like, I guess in moderation, meaning like 1 or 2 drinks a week, that's fine. I'm eating healthy and enough and working out with strength training and walking, etc. I feel like I gain muscle but cannot lose fat. Do I need to eat less? What is stopping fitness progress? A lot of times, if that's the case, it's either like there's a lot of stress involved coming from the gut, or thyroid issues like low free T3 levels, or high reverse T3, meaning that your T3 is being converted into an inactive form with cortisol. So are you taking your temperatures and your pulses? Are you seeing them in between 97.8 and 98.6 throughout the day? Are you seeing your pulses between 75 and 90, or are they climbing higher? You have to kind of look into that. Many times, I mean, it's like a lot of people say like, okay, I'm not losing weight, so I need to like cut my calories. You can kind of experiment with a little bit less on the days that you're not as active, and eating, eating for your activity. So on the days you're more active, you do tend to want to eat more and follow your hunger cues. Some women do better with smaller meals, very small, frequent meals. The reason for this is you guys have to consider that when you eat a big ass meal, your body has to digest all of that and use all of that. If it doesn't use all of that, what happens? It gets stored as fuel for later, aka fat. And so when you do very small, frequent meals throughout the day, you have much more of a likelihood to just burn what you're consuming, and then you know, you're going to get hungry 2 to 3 hours later, and you're going to eat again, and your body's going to burn what you just consumed, and then you're going to do it again. And so I find that a lot of women are eating like bigger meals, and it's kind of holding them back a little bit. So smaller, frequent, almost like snack sized meals throughout the day works better. For me, that was a big mistake I was making, and that was a change that I made like about 8 months ago. And oh my gosh, like the change, it's crazy like how much leaner you become just by changing that. Also, you want to ask yourself, are you chewing your food well? A lot of people don't recognize that they are, when you're in a stress state or cortisol state, your body kind of overrides your ability to chew, and so you just chew enough to where you can swallow, and there's this huge chunks of food getting into your throat. If you can feel your food going down your throat, it is not chewed, it's not chewed enough. And think about it. That big chunk of food is going to rot, ferment, and have bacteria go ham on that huge bolus or chunk of food. And those bacteria are the same bacteria that create toxins that inflame you and make you fat, make you insulin resistant. And so one of the biggest things I say, small frequent meals throughout the day, and chew your damn food. If there are chunks of food coming down your throat, a lot of people, one of the most common things that lean people have in common is that they are slow and mindful eaters. They eat, they chew, swallow until it's liquid, all the while putting their fork down in between bites. When you're scarfing down your food, you have no ability to tap into your hunger signals. Your body's gonna be overloaded with all this food that it's having a hard time to digest because it's not saturated with saliva. And so you really do, those are 2 habits that I really think are important. If you haven't got a full thyroid panel done, that would be important. And then if that's still not enough, you might have to play around with macronutrients. Maybe you're eating too much fat and too little carbs, or maybe you're eating too many carbs and too little fat. Where are your fats coming from? Are they coming from nuts and seeds? Or are they coming from coconut oil, grass-fed butter, and ghee? The reason why I always bring up saturated fats, you guys, is our culture is really whacked when it comes to saturated fats. They act like, oh my God, saturated fats are the devil. This comes from a fad that was started in the 50s and 60s when the vegetable oil companies wanted to start promoting Crisco and shortening and plant fats. Before, we had always eaten butter and cream. That was where we got our fats from. We didn't like press seeds for their oil. And there actually was this farmer, there's this study that was done, and there's this kind of interesting phenomenon that happened a while back. This pig farmer, he was trying to fatten up his pigs because he wanted them to fatten up quickly so he could slaughter them, and he started feeding them coconut oil, thinking that that was gonna fatten them up. He was like, I just need to fatten them up quickly. He started feeding them coconut oil, and over the course of that month, they become incredibly muscular and lean. And he was like, what the heck? Like, I want my pigs to be fat. Like, what's going on? They got so muscular and so lean and so healthy, he had to change their food. He was like, these pigs are never going to fatten up on coconut oil. So he changed to like grapeseed oil, canola oil, and soybean oil, and within a month, they became so fat. And it was because those oils are directly anti-thyroid. They suppress the metabolism, they're estrogenic, and they make you fat. And so I always say, like, when you want to lose weight, the fats that you're consuming, the types of fats that you're consuming totally matter. If you want to lose weight, really focus in on coconut oil, grass-fed butter, and ghee, but mostly coconut oil because it's just so metabolically promoting. So there are always like little caveats, and then if all of that is happening and you're like, I'm still not losing weight, then that's time to look to the gut. What's going on in your gut? What are those bacteria doing? And those gut bacteria can definitely keep us fat. Hi, I think you answered this before, but what are your thoughts on medical medium? Started juicing celery last week to help with postpartum eczema and received the liver rescue book as a gift. The medical medium to me is a little shady. Like I get weird vibes from him and get a huge gut check. A lot of what he says is just really bizarre, and there's a lot of weird stories on the internet if you dig pretty deeply about, women that have actually paid for consultations with him, supplements he's recommended to children who have actually died. There's a lot of weird stuff going on with him. You have to understand the celery juice craze is just so ridiculously funny to me because, again, it's just treating an issue. It's not getting to the root of the issue. Celery is very rich in sodium and potassium, which I always talk about here as, we need it to lower our stress and support stomach acid. You can can get sodium and potassium just by making sure you're eating sodium and potassium rich foods, but people are obsessed with low calorie foods. And so they're like, oh, celery juice is, there's vegetables, there's no carbohydrates in it. And so like, that's a great option. And I'm like, it can be sometimes, but it's very cooling to the body. And it doesn't support the liver in the way that you think it might. Like a lot of people are like, oh yeah, greens are so detoxifying to the liver. And I'm like, if your liver does not have amino acids, protein, specifically glycine, which comes from collagenous or gelatinous foods like bone broth and collagen, and if your liver does not have any sugar, you will have a messed up liver. That's the bottom line. And celery juice might put a band-aid on it, but it's not going to fix the issue. Celery juice is just really rich in minerals. And I always say, you've got to eat a very mineral-rich diet. That's why I'm telling women to constantly pound that sea salt. Liberally salt your foods. Drink potassium-rich foods like orange juice and coconut water. And magnesium, make sure you're either taking magnesium or you're making sure you're making a really good point to get a lot of magnesium rich foods in. And then calcium, like what the heck, we're not eating enough calcium rich foods these days. So all of those things are going to really change gut health and change how the gut's detoxifying and bile's flowing. And yeah, I guess celery juice is a way you can do that, but I think it's disgusting. And it doesn't necessarily fix an issue. And it can get like kind of pricey and monotonous, and it's just like, ugh, like I have to make it again today. But I think it's like one of those things where if it works, it works. And if it doesn't, don't like force yourself to do it. What causes breakouts specifically around ovulation? That's when I noticed mine. Like I always say, you guys, estrogen always drives acne. Always, always, always drives acne. Estrogenic, remember that testosterone can convert into estrogen in the liver, and estrogen is going to actually damages the oil producing parts of your pore. And so that's why when somebody is estrogenic, they'll have inflamed skin, because estrogen is directly inflammatory. But in addition, they'll also have very oily skin because it actually damages the specific mechanism that creates oil or sebum in the skin. And so remember that your biggest estrogen spike of your cycle happens 2 to 3 days before you ovulate, to let your brain know it's time to ovulate. So estrogen spikes, and then the brain says, okay, the ovaries are ready, and then they pump out luteinizing hormone, and that actually stimulates the drop of an egg or ovulation. And so if you're getting symptoms around ovulation, you know that your estrogen detox is horrible. You're not detoxifying estrogen well, or your estrogen is systemically high. You're probably not making enough progesterone in that luteal phase to balance out estrogen, and so you're getting estrogen symptoms in that first half of your cycle. This is not normal. That's really the only time that you should have estrogen dominance is just a couple days before ovulation. It's a temporary state of estrogen dominance that should immediately be overpowered and shadowed by progesterone. And a lot of women, what's happening is they're spiking estrogen, and it's just staying high all through the luteal phase, and their progesterone is just like meh, like just flatlined. And so this is the problem. It's estrogen should just spike once and then start to decline, and progesterone should immediately become the star of the show. And so what I would do is I would really focus on liver detoxification, coffee enemas, castor oil packs. If you're interested in doing like chlorophyll and milk thistle, those are really great for liver support. And then overall, just making sure you're getting enough protein, making sure you're getting enough B vitamins. I really like using brewer's yeast or nutritional yeast for B vitamins. It has every single B vitamin. It's like a B complex from nature. And the only B vitamin it doesn't have is biotin, and that's a pretty good B complex. So make some B vitamin cookies with some nutritional yeast or some brewer's yeast, or you can do a B complex as well. I just think that sometimes synthetic B vitamins can get really allergenic, since they're usually sourced from corn. So overall, I would really just focus on supporting the liver days up to ovulation, before this even begins. Eating a raw carrot every day is a great way to do that. Just making sure you're having a bowel movement daily. It's really just about supporting detox before this happens. So that I would probably start the minute that you stop bleeding, the minute your period stops, start working on detoxification. Do you know a lot about hypothyroidism? I was recently diagnosed and really don't want to be on medicine. Yeah, that's literally what I do here. I talk about thyroid health and how thyroid health, with mainstream medicine, is just bizarrely misunderstood. Hypothyroidism, there's two different things. True hypothyroidism is when the thyroid is under functioning. a conversion issue, or your inability to convert T4 to T3 does not happen in the thyroid. That is a liver issue and a gut issue. Keep in mind that your thyroid creates T4 and sends it to the liver and the gut and other tissues to be converted into the active form T3. So if you have low T3, they definitely call this hypothyroidism in a clinical setting, but it's technically not an underfunctioning thyroid. It's an underfunctioning liver and gut. You're having a severe conversion issue. And so I encourage you, go dig through all of my stories. Progesterone and thyroid are intimately connected. If you're not ovulating and you're not making progesterone, or if you have long-term birth control history use, then what happens is if you're not making progesterone, if you're not ovulating, your thyroid is going to directly be affected. Keep in mind that estrogen is very anti-thyroid. It damages thyroid tissue, but it also burdens the liver. And so it's going to cause an underfunctioning thyroid, but it's also going to really impair your ability to convert T4 into T3. And T3 is what actually goes to your cells to help you metabolize everything better. So yes, when you have hypothyroidism, you never just take a diagnosis and say, this is what I have. Stupid. Don't do that. You need to know what your labs are and what your individual hormonal imbalances are. Where's your estrogen? Where's your progesterone? Where's your testosterone? Where's your free T3? Where's your reverse T3? Where's your cortisol? All of those hormones work together. Your stress hormones coming from your adrenals work together with your thyroid hormones and work together with your sex hormones. And if you only have one perspective, and if your doctor didn't even run a full thyroid panel, then you don't even know what's going on. A lot of people are like, I have hypothyroidism. I'm like, where's your progesterone at? They're like, I don't know. And I'm like, then you don't know why you have hypothyroidism. You got to dig deeper. And you got to understand why your thyroid is underfunctioning. Or if your thyroid's not underfunctioning, why are you not converting T4 into T3? And many times it's a gut and a liver issue. You're not eating enough. You're overburdening your body. Maybe your habits aren't working for you. You're not eating frequently enough. There's not enough salt in the diet. I mean, over and over again. There's so many things, but this is why I'm coming out with my online program, Fully Nourished, is it pretty much just teaches you how to actually get to the bottom of your hormonal issues and eat for hormonal issues. A lot of women are on restrictive diets. They're on really high nut and seed diets. They're drinking lots of nut milks and lots of nut cheeses, not recognizing that all of those things are really hard on the thyroid and really hard on the gut and the liver, and it's actually going to really prevent conversion. So yeah, that is kind of a short story, but I would really recommend you dig into a lot of my resources here. A lot of my stories are really going to help you make sense, and then all my live Q&As are on YouTube at Just Cash Wellness that you can kind of dig into. We've talked extensively about like metabolism and thyroid, hypothyroid. Poo guide, how to cook vegetables to be easily digestible. Yeah, so, you just want them to be well cooked, and you guys don't want to eat, like, I know, like, we have this culture where it's like, if something's good for you, the more the better, but vegetables, we do need to keep in mind our biology, and plants themselves are very intelligent. They don't want to be eaten, and even though they're not alive, I don't mean like they don't have a consciousness, they're still alive, and, we can debate if they have a consciousness or not, because there's actually a lot of studies showing that like vegetables have a consciousness, which is weird. But vegetables are going to be they want to prevent themselves from being eaten. And the way that they do that is they have phytates or natural plant pesticides on them. And so if we know this, we keep this in mind, vegetables don't want to be eaten. They have a lot of plant poisons, from lectins to phytates to goitrogens to just about anything on them to prevent them from being eaten. We have to understand that anything above the ground is going to have a lot more protective mechanisms because there's a lot more bugs on top than underneath. And so tubers, this is why I'm always saying roots are a really great source of getting your vegetables from, because they're easy to digest and they don't have as much natural plant poisons that prevent you from being able to digest them. Only thing with root vegetables is you do need to make sure you peel them. Carrots, potatoes, sweet potatoes, whatever it is, never ever eat the skin. The reason for this is those contain saponins, and saponins are they are antibacterial and they really wreck the gut because their goal is to actually prevent bugs from entering the tuber, the carrot, the sweet potato, but that's not good for us. So we do want to make sure we're always peeling our vegetables, and since root vegetables are always pretty starchy, we do need to make sure that starch is always well cooked. cooked. You never want to cook undercooked starch or eat undercooked starch. You never want to eat raw starch. Ugh, it's so bad for you. It really proliferates gut bacteria growth, and most people don't have great gut bacteria. They don't want to like promote excessive growth. And then when it comes to above ground vegetables, just well cooked. So for greens, I usually will cook them into a broth and just take the greens out and drink the broth for easiest digestion, or I'll really well steam them. I always cook them in a fat just because it helps you absorb the nutrients in the greens better. So like saute in coconut oil or ghee or grass-fed butter. Or I'll roast everything. So I'll roast in the oven like in coconut oil and some salt just until it's like well cooked. Overall, like, I don't really obsess about like, oh God, is it, I just make sure they're really well cooked. And then I'll have the occasion, like, I'm not saying that you never want to eat raw greens. Like, the occasional salad is fine. It's just like a lot of people are just sitting there like eating huge bowls of lettuce like all the time, acting like that's sustenance. It is not sustenance. It's a great complement. It's going to provide some K2. It's going to really help feed certain strains of gut bacteria, but it's not food. It's not your main source of sustenance. You can't live on kale alone or greens alone. And so overall, like, just well cook them. Steam, roast, boil, whatever kind of floats your boat, but you just want to make sure it's super well cooked. And at any time, if a vegetable comes out on the other end, it's not being digested well, and it just shouldn't be consumed, or you might be consuming too much of it. The only thing that's like the exception to the rule is the raw carrot, which is meant to come out on the other side because it's actually binding to things and going all the way through. It's not being digested, it's just doing its job. I've read you can't change the type of glucose burner you are. Slow burner is never going to become a fast burner. You can only improve your diet to support your ability to use glucose. Thoughts? Well, see, this is like, so you guys have to understand the science and the history of this goes back actually to the beginning of the 1900s, where a man started to, there was two schools of thought in science, that you can create unlimited energy by giving the body what it needs, like a child, right? If you look at a child or a baby, they have like really crazy metabolisms. They grow very quickly, their hair grows really quickly, their bones grow really quickly. They're just growing and rapidly changing. If they get hurt, they heal very quickly, like they get a head bump. They actually started to notice when a very common child injury is when a kid cuts off the tip of their finger, and they would bring the tip of the finger into the doctor, and the doctor would sew it back on, and it became like a thing that they would sew it back on. However, one doctor forgot to sew the kid's finger back on and just bandaged it up, and 3 months later the kid came back and his finger had grown back. And so this shows just how fast and a kid's metabolism is, how quickly they heal. All this to say is that if you keep a metabolism going like that, there's a school of thought that you can actually get your metabolism high by getting your body kind of like where a child was, kind of like, how healthy a child is with high T3 function and high liver function and high gut function. You can really almost mimic a very fast functioning metabolism of a child, and that is unlimited energy. What's to say we can't speed up our metabolisms to the point of where we can burn glucose efficiently? But there's a lot of things in the world that really squash our ability to burn glucose. Poor liver function, poor gut function, low T3, low progesterone, excessive estrogen, excessive serotonin in the gut, inflammation. I could go on and on and on. All issues that can be tackled, and who's to say that that won't speed your metabolism or your ability to burn glucose up? I do not believe that everyone has a type or a burner. I believe that it is a possibility to become a fast glucose burner. You just have to do the right things. I highly recommend, there's a book by her name is Kate Deering, and it's called How to Heal Your Metabolism. It's a really good basic book on how to just kind of understand how you actually go about restoring your metabolism and becoming a fast glucose burner. The biggest lie to me is that everybody is different. I know that everyone is unique in a way. However, at the end of the day, the body is very similar, and the actual function of the body is almost the same. And so to say that, oh, this person can't burn glucose and this person can burn glucose, it's just bizarre to me, because it's like, what's impairing this person's ability to burn glucose? There's something that's impairing them. Inflammation, poor liver function, so many things. And so this idea of metabolic typing is just a little bizarre to me. I'm not going to cater to a slow metabolism. I'm not going to say like, oh, you burn things slowly. Okay, I'm just going to let you do that. Like, oh, you don't work right. It's fine. Like, no. We're going to do everything we can to really get the body burning things as efficiently as possible. And that's kind of the goal there. And the fats that you consume and the types of protein you consume are going to completely determine how you burn the sugar that you eat. And so saturated fats are what actually help you burn sugar properly. Polyunsaturated fats and any other unsaturated fats are going to make you burn sugar slowly. Look around. What are people eating mostly? Lots and lots of plant fats packed with canola oil, industrial seed oils. I mean, we have no idea why people are burning things so slowly, why, prevalence of diabetes is so high, but I have a theory for sure. Everyone before the 50s burned sugar just fine. Everyone drank Coca-Cola and they were lean as lean can be. But the minute that industrial seed oils came into the picture, 10, 15 years later, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, all of a sudden we can't burn sugar properly. What's going on? Is it really the sugar's fault, or is it something else? And that is kind of, this idea that everyone is so different is just, the body is very similar. I'm not saying that there's not little changes and caveats between each person, but there is kind of a fundamentally, like, the cells should burn the same. The Krebs cycle should work the same. That's just kind of biology. Hey Jessica, just want to say thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Tanya. I appreciate you being here, and you guys are so encouraging. Like, you guys always send me DMs, and you're always so thankful, and I love you guys. Like, you guys are so sweet and appreciative, and you guys have created like such a strong little community that's so positive and so encouraging, which just makes my heart so happy. What's your thoughts on carnivore nutrition until one fixes their insulin resistance body? So here's the deal with carnivore. A lot of people on carnivore have super elevated cholesterol. Now, I'm not saying that, cholesterol is needed. Low cholesterol is just as bad as high cholesterol. Let's be real here. However, super elevated cholesterol is usually an indicator that the body's not transferring T4 into T3 properly. You have very low T3. Metabolically, you're unstable. So we have to understand, you guys, that even though you're not going to go chug a big gulp, right? Like, I'm not saying like, oh, you need to go chug a big gulp, but a healthy body that can burn glucose, if you chugged a big gulp, your blood sugar levels would go back to normal within an hour. Your body would burn that sugar. Not saying that's a good thing to do. However, a healthy body can uptake that glucose and utilize it as fuel. It would warm you up, your body would use it. Take someone that's on carnivore or keto and give them a big gulp, and you will find very quickly that their oral glucose tolerance is so poor that they probably would be diagnosed with pre-diabetes. So just because you're not eating sugar, just because your insulin levels are low, does not mean you are fixing your body's resistance to those things. Do you understand? So just because if you're not eating sugar, your test for insulin will come back very low. Your blood glucose will be very, very low. Of course, you're not eating any sugar. The minute that you eat sugar, and you'll see a different story. A lot of people on keto are actually making themselves insulin resistant. There's actually 3 studies that just came out. One showing that a high-fat, low-carb diet causes insulin resistance in the liver. That is a very scary thing. That pretty much is saying that there's signs that keto can actually make you have fatty liver. You can get to a point where your liver cells cannot even burn glucose properly. That is a incredibly scary state to be. There's another study that just came out that shows that it manipulates the gut bacteria in such a way that if you ever go back to eating carbohydrates, you will struggle with metabolic issues for a while unless you kind of change that, because it kills off certain strains and it causes other strains of bacteria to grow. It is a very scary thing. It's like one of those things where just because it's a natural state of being, aka ketosis, keep in mind that why our body went under ketosis. Our ancestors' bodies went under ketosis when glucose was not available. It was winter time. It was a stressful time. Keep in mind that shorter days that don't have a lot of light is incredibly stressful on the body and the thyroid. all of your body has to slow down metabolically. And when you go back to burning sugar, I pray to God that you can actually burn sugar. But many times, the longer you're on carnivore, the longer you're on keto, the less your body becomes able to actually burn sugar properly. And keep in mind, the cells prefer glucose. The brain cells prefer glucose. The heart cells, only when they're working, they prefer glucose. When they're at rest, they do prefer fat. But almost every cell in your body prefers glucose. And so when you're on carnivore, your body is still manufacturing glucose. But the way that it's doing that is by raising your cortisol levels. You are going to eat yourself alive on carnivore. And you also create incredibly huge amounts of food allergies. A lot of people that go on the very strict keto or carnivore cannot tolerate anything when they go back, because what happens is their thymus gland just starts to disintegrate. Their body just eats itself under stress, and you begin to have just so many food allergies. Because keep in mind that high thyroid function is needed for a proper immunity. So many people that have autoimmunity or like a lot of food allergies, they actually just have underfunctioning thyroids. And to me, if you go on carnivore, you should pray to God that you can go back onto a normal diet at one point in time. And it will probably take years of having to heal to do so. So you can't fix insulin resistance on a carnivore diet. You just can't. The minute you go back to burning sugar, you're going to see your resistance to insulin just kind of rear its ugly head. You need to really make sure that you can burn sugar properly, and you got to do that in the right way. As a carnivore diet's not going to do that for you. In fact, it's going to really burden the liver as well. Plus, keep in mind that muscle meats are super high in amino acids, specifically L-methionine. That's going to be very, very acidic to the body. Keep in mind, our ancestors did not eat a lot of muscle meats. They ate very little muscle meats. They ate a lot of organ meats. They ate a lot of like broths and the collagenous parts. They ate bone marrow, lots of organ meats. And so when we're like just eating muscle meats all the time, say hello to acidity. And your body, I don't understand the whole carnivore movement. That's a great way to just destroy your body. Is it easily possible for progesterone to be too high? Easily possible. I mean, if you're not detoxifying it in the liver properly, it can be high, especially if you're like supplementing with it, but I wouldn't say it's easily possible. It is possible if you're being kind of reckless with it. Is raspberry leaf tea okay for endometriosis? Yeah, I would say so. I think it's really good. It's very rich in iron. It's very rich in a lot of vitamins and minerals that you need for toning the uterus. So yeah, I would say yes, it is good for endometriosis. But again, every herb is a little different. So even if you have a certain disease or imbalance, that doesn't mean like it's blanket across the board. Like, oh, somebody said this was good for endometriosis, so it must be good for me. You are not endometriosis. You are a person. You know what I mean? So you kind of have to kind of pay attention to how your body responds. When is a good time of the month to get a pelvic ultrasound? I have endometriosis symptoms, but the last 2 ultrasounds came back negative. I would say like around where your estrogen's going to be the highest, maybe pre-ovulation or mid-luteal phase. That would probably be my choice. Or even pre-period. Many NTPs and functional practitioners believe in FODMAP and food elimination before testing. Is that a good way to pinpoint what may be irritating the gut? It can be. It's one of those things where for example, like IgG food sensitivity testing is interesting to me because, yeah, you're testing for that your body reacted to a food at one point in time, right? Like you will find an antibody, but how do you know when that was? It could have been literally like 10 years ago that your body reacted to that food at that one point in time. So it's hard to know, like, am I currently reacting to this every time I eat it, or am I, have I reacted to it at one point in time? You have an antibody against it. Okay, great. What is your body doing with that food? That's a whole different story. And if you have a wrecked gut or a wrecked digestive system, of course you're going to have antibodies in your gut because there are proteins leaking into the bloodstream and your body's going to attack them. That doesn't mean that that food specifically is like, oh, that's wreaking havoc. No, that's just your body's attacking it because it's getting into the bloodstream in the first place. The fact that it's getting into the bloodstream is the problem. You need to chew your food better. You need to work on your gut health a lot better. You got to get your stomach acid levels up, your enzyme levels up, which a lot of times is lowering stress on the body. I think attacking gut issues without attacking stress and thyroid issues is kind of a moot point. You're going to find you're on this constant roller coaster of like, I'm healing my gut, and then your gut gets worse, and then you're healing your gut, and your gut gets worse because you're not actually fixing what's driving these issues. I do believe, so like a low FODMAP diet is really just a low fiber diet. Let's be real here. And fiber feeds bacteria. So if you have an overgrowth of bacteria, you're going to feel amazing not eating a lot of fiber. That is going to be the case for sure. I think an elimination diet can be helpful for some people. However, we tend to blame foods for internal imbalances. Just because you cut dairy and you feel better off of dairy doesn't mean that you've healed anything. If you go back to eating dairy and you react to it just as bad as before, there's still an issue. Just because you're not expressing that issue doesn't mean the issue is gone. We have this like out of sight, out of mind mentality, like, oh, if I don't see it, it must not be there. And I'm like, yeah, it's still there. It's just maybe more low grade. And so it's one of those things where you have to choose the practitioner that you're going to work with, and you got to trust that they are going to, everyone has a different way of going about gut issues. I found that doing elimination diets didn't really do anything for my clients except for make them have a really bad fear around food. I think a lot of practitioners are disordered in their eating perspectives. They're disordered in the way that they go about, eliminating all these foods. They're eating all these non-foods to me, like, they're making milk out of hemp seeds and what the heck? No, that's not milk. That's juice. That's nut juice mixed with water. That's disgusting. There's just like some weird, oh, I'm more pure because I'm not eating this, or I'm this, and you have to just understand why you might be choosing to not eat certain things and why you might be choosing to eat certain things. Even this like wide elimination of gluten, like people are like so afraid of gluten, and I'm like, gluten is not the problem when it comes to wheat. Wheat is hybridized, meaning that it has been spliced with grasses. It is no longer wheat. It is a wheat grass. And our bodies cannot digest grass. We're not a cow. You don't have 3 stomachs. You can't digest grass. And so that is why we don't digest wheat very well any longer. It's completely hybridized. It's completely wrong. And so we need to go back to more ancient or heirloom grains, which as long as they're soaked, fermented, risen, and prepared properly, we can usually digest just fine. And so it's like really about understanding that the quality of your food and the type of the food that you're eating is so much more important than if you're reacting to this or this food. I don't really believe in demonizing foods, to just blanketly say like, oh, dairy is bad. It's just ridiculously like short-sighted to me. You're just blanketly blaming a severe imbalance in the body on a food and not actually fixing what's going on in the body, which I don't think is going to do anything. I prefer my clients to be able to enjoy ice cream as long as it's high quality and it doesn't have a bunch of food additives and it's organic. Like, why do we have to demonize foods that we love? If our body truly isn't reacting to those foods, it's just reacting to certain additives or processing practices that are coinciding with those foods. I think there is definitely a time and a place for restrictive or elimination diets, but I don't think practitioners know. They just kind of blanketly throw restrictive diets on everyone, thinking that it's the time and the place, whereas a lot of times restrictive diets are actually driving people's symptoms and making them worse. Hi Jess, my sleep has been off, always wake up in the middle of the night and sometimes struggle going back to sleep. My bedtime routine is no screens, red light therapy, and reading a book. So I would say that maybe you should try having a little sugar and protein sitting on your bedside table for when you wake up, even if it has a little salt. My favorite, especially when I struggle with insomnia, which happens from time to time when I'm under stress, is I'll do 4 to 6 ounces of orange juice mixed with 1 tablespoon of collagen and some salt, as much as I can stand without it tasting disgusting, and I will drink that in the middle of the night, and it usually helps me go back to sleep immediately and kind of just get back to relax. I also will do deep breathing. So 1 nostril breathing, I know it's funny, is really really relaxing, or just taking really deep diaphragmatic breaths through your nose and exhaling through your mouth can really help calm and cool the nervous system. A lot of times if we're having a hard time going back to sleep, or we're feeling kind of wired when we wake up in the middle of the night, is because our nervous system has kind of turned on, our stress hormones are high. And you know, sometimes it can be like we can pinpoint it to, okay, what am I doing before bed that could maybe be riling myself up, whether it's my thoughts or my body. Excuse me. And so that's what I would start with. And then some people, sorry, I just like swallowed my own saliva. And then some people actually do good with using some incandescent lights while they're sleeping. So actually sometimes darkness can be stressful on the body, and a lot of people do sleep better when they are in pitch black darkness, but some people that actually creates a stress response. You have to think of it in terms of survival. The human body is not at its prime when it's dark out, right? We can't see, we're vulnerable. It's not a great time to be like being chased by an angry bear because we don't have the advantage. And so we need to kind of understand that darkness can be stressful, especially if our body feels like we're in that fight or flight state. So turning on an incandescent light, not an LED light, on a low, like just kind of pointing it towards the wall away from us, can actually sometimes help us sleep a lot deeper, just because it's like our body thinks it's still kind of daytime, and incandescent lighting doesn't have that bad spectrum of blue light. Incandescent lights are actually a red light therapy. They just don't have quite the tinge of red that we tend to coincide with red light therapy, but incandescents are amber tinted. And so that could be something like just a small low level incandescent light might help if drinking some sugar with salt and protein in the middle of the night doesn't help. How much is too much when eating leafy greens? I understand moderation is key. I think it just kind of depends on the person. If you have like severe thyroid issues and you're not seeing your body warm up any longer, like you're just really not recovering, or you're not seeing healing occur, then sometimes doing less leafy greens is better, like 2 or 3 times a week, rather than like sometimes people are doing them like 2 or 3 times a day. And just kind of keeping it pretty more moderate and seeing if that works. But it's like one of those things where if your digestion is fine and everything's good, you're not seeing undigested food in your stool, don't make an issue where an issue isn't. But there's a lot of people coming to me on like really heavy, like lots of cruciferous veggies, lots of greens, and because they're just being told like the more is better. And I'm like, no, like those are super hard to digest for people that are digestively impaired or need quick nutrients, quick energy. Because you guys have to think of this, like your body only has a certain amount of energy to expend, right? And you digesting these really fibrous, bulky foods that have very little calories. Keep in mind, they are nutrient dense, but they don't have a lot of calories in them. You're expending a lot of energy or calories to digest them and not getting a lot in return. And so we do want to make sure we're getting the nutrients from these foods without like obsessively overloading our body with these foods. So I say like 2 or 3 times a week is plenty. If you want to go daily, that's great. If that works for your body, a lot of people feel a lot less bloated and a lot more lean and a lot better when they're not doing too many green vegetables. Are chia seeds and sunflower seeds okay in small quantities, or will it contribute to an omega-3, omega-6 imbalance? You guys know, like, I'm not against nuts and seeds. I just don't think there's a reason to like add them in like for health reasons. You know what I mean? Like, it's like, don't think like, oh, I'm like forcing myself to eat these foods because they're so good for me. If there's a recipe that has them in them, or you're tying them in like from time to time, that's fine. Like, even in Fully Nourished, I have like a recipe for making like cinnamon toast crunch, and it has like raw sunflower seeds in it because it's like a great binder. Like, it's a good, it bakes well and it kind of like gets crunchy, and it's a great texture. It's not like every single recipe in the book has a nuts and seeds, but sometimes you'll see them kind of tied in a little bit as a tool in moderation. So for me, like chia seeds though, they do need to be soaked. They're really like undigestible. They're not something that's going to provide you anything but just bulk and fiber. They are like so difficult for the body to break down. So it's kind of one of those things for when it comes to chia seeds, if you're trying to get like the poof factor, whatever, that's fine. But if you're trying to get like some nutrients or something from them, good luck with that, just because they're so small and they're not that easy to break down. Sunflower seeds are fine, again, in small quantities. What is a good brand of coconut water? I use a can brand. It's called Amy and Brian's, and it's just pure coconut water, and I like them. They use BPA-free cans. I know cans aren't perfect. Like, it's kind of one of those things where it's like pick your poison in our modern day culture. It's like, yeah, I wish everything was bottled in glass, but some things are bottled in plastic and some things are bottled in cans, and it's like, oh God, like plastic or cans, like what should I do? So Amy and Brian's is my favorite brand. They're less pricey than Harmless Harvest, which I love Harmless Harvest. It tastes delicious. It's like that pink one in the plastic bottle that you can get at most health food stores, but it's kind of like one of those things where, you know, it's expensive and it's pricey and it's not doable all the time. So Amy and Brian's is my favorite. And then like, you guys, like, you can also just get a young green coconut if you see them, like if you have a local Asian food store, or like we have like an Asian a Thai, they have a lot of Thai foods. They have like a lot of mixture of like Japanese foods and Chinese foods, which is really awesome, but they have a lot of vegetables coming from like Indonesia and Thailand, and they have a lot of young green coconuts. And so if you can get your hands on those are a great way. You just take they have like something called the cocoa jack that you can actually like nail a little hole in the top and put a straw in, which is super fun. It's fun for summer. But you can also just take like the blunt part of the knife and just like hack a hole in the top, and that's a great place to get coconut water too. So it's like one of those things where you just want to look at the ingredients. There's a lot of good brands out there, but there are a lot of brands that will trick you and they'll call it coconut water, and then you'll turn it around and it'll be like coconut concentrate, water, and sugar. And so you're just looking for pure coconut water. Hey, what is the best way to take chlorophyll? Okay, so I do the chlorophyll lemonade, and the detox lemonade is actually going to be in Fully Nourished. So it's going to be 10 ounces of filtered water. You can do sparkling. Remember that like San Pellegrino and Perrier are really rich in minerals. So, you know, like sulfur compounds and magnesium. It's a great, you know, it's good to get some sparkling water in here and there, especially sparkling mineral water. But you can just do regular water, 2 tablespoons of chlorophyll, 2 tablespoons of organic cranberry concentrate, and then 2 dropperfuls of milk thistle. And that is like the detox lemonade, and you would drink that every single day. But that's my favorite way to get chlorophyll in. What is the ideal T3 level? It just kind of depends on the person. You really don't just want to look at T3. You want to look at free T3. And then if you're still having hypothyroid symptoms, keep in mind that you can have subclinical hypothyroidism, meaning that it doesn't come up on a test at all. This is why 50 years ago, they didn't even use blood tests at all, because they didn't feel like they were reliable. A lot of people think that modern medicine is way better than 50 years ago. That would be a false. There are so many things that were done, you know, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And this is why I get a lot of, I'll look at a lot of research studies from that time, because doctors were like on it. They were so freaking smart, and they were using things. It would be like, oh, you've got this, okay, coffee enema 3 times a day. You know, they were actually doing things for people that helped. Now it's just like slap a medication on it, you're on your way. And so, you know, if you guys really want to dig into things that are going to help you, start digging into things that were going on, you know, 50, 70 years ago. That's where the magic was happening. There were a lot of innovative studies being done. Then what started to happen in the 80s and 90s is genetics came into the picture, right? It was like, oh, epigenetics is going to be the future of medicine. And they started putting lots of funding into genetics, and they stopped putting a lot of funding into metabolism, metabolic stress, when there was so much evidence that cancer is a metabolic illness, diabetes is a metabolic illness, stroke, metabolic illness, heart disease, metabolic illness, yet the funding was going towards genetics, because genetics is a big business, you guys. When you spit in that tube and you send it in, they take your data and they can sell it to anybody. And so they like that. They like you to think that, oh, genetics is the future of medicine, when it's been a wah, hasn't done anything for us as a society. There's nothing that good that has come from genetics at all. Like, they said they were going to cure cancer with genetics 15 years ago, and look at it now, like, whatever. Oh, you have MTHFR? Okay. But anyways, so for testing your thyroid levels, you can have subclinical hypothyroidism that doesn't come back on a test. This is why I'm always encouraging you to take your temperatures and pulses. That's going to tell you so much more than a test, especially if you're still having symptoms. But free T3, you usually want it above 3. So like 3 to 4 is a really good free T3 level. You want your TSH below 2. So anything that is under 5 is going to be considered fine. Anything above 5 is going to be considered hypothyroid. But ideal levels are usually between 1 and 2, more towards the lower end of 1 for TSH. And then if you're like, I still have hypothyroidism symptoms and my free T3 levels are great, where are your reverse T3 levels at? Reverse T3 gets converted, or T3 gets converted into reverse T3 when cortisol is present. Cortisol actually converts T3 to reverse T3, which is an inactive form of T3. Your body cannot utilize it. And so you kind of want to make sure, again, hormones are not like, it's not like a straightforward thing. It's not like, oh, my T3 levels are good, I don't have thyroidism, like, it's fine, I don't have anything, thyroid issues. It's not how the body works. It's like, okay, I still have cold hands and cold feet all the time. My temperatures and my pulses are super low. That is screaming thyroid issues. I don't care what a test says. Your metabolism is under functioning. And so it's really important to take lab tests, of course, but also if the lab tests come back normal, dig deeper. It's not like, oh, I don't have an issue, I'm gonna move on now. There usually is an issue if you feel like there's an issue. So the best way to start testing your thyroid, especially if you can't go get a blood test run, is start taking your temperatures and pulses right when you wake up, 40 minutes after breakfast, and from 1 to 3 p.m. You should see your temps and pulses slowly rise through the course of the day, always staying between 97.8 and 98.6 for temps and 70 to 90, well, 75 to 90 for pulses. If you're chronically low, that just shows your metabolism is just suppressed. If you're chronically high, that shows that there's a lot of stress playing a role. Sorry, I lost my connection for a second. So that is a great way to start testing. If you constantly have cold hands and cold feet, that's a sign there's probably some metabolic issues going on. But if you're looking at free T3, you want it kind of between 3 and 4, and reverse T3 should be under 15. You're the best, Jess. Thank you for all this information. You're welcome, you guys. This is just stuff that I've like collected over the years, you know? Constipation before a period for like 10 days. Is this a progesterone issue? Probably. Estrogen can really like slow down digestion and really not, it can actually slow down bioflow from the gallbladder, which can really affect how you're going to digest fat. So what I would do is I would eat a raw carrot every single day, maybe twice a day. And you can even do psyllium husk for the time being. Like a lot of people will say like, oh, psyllium husk, like, you don't want to get reliant on psyllium husk, but you definitely want to be pooping during your luteal phase, you know? And then well-cooked greens can also really kind of like move things along, like cooking them really well in coconut oil or ghee, like spinach or Swiss chard, or even some kale, as long as it's super well cooked in fat, can really help move things along. And then if you're just like, I'm still constipated, it could just be a progesterone issue. It might just be something that you are having just too much estrogen and it's slowing everything down, and you're kind of inflamed. And that would be like something that you would want to look into. But I would try just like some simple things like magnesium, raw carrot every day, well-cooked greens, even some psyllium husk. And then if not, you could dig a little deeper. Is fruit by itself ever okay, or fruit juice, or always pair it with protein and fat? This kind of depends on where you're at hormonally. I think like people that don't have severe insulin resistance they're fine with like some fruit. You might find that you're like super hungry 30 minutes later. Like for me, if I eat fruit alone, like I'm like starving within an hour, just because my blood sugar goes high and then it goes low. So it is nice. It is best if you can combine your fruit with a protein, but it's not like, oh my God, I can't eat it if I don't have a protein. Like you can eat it. You just might find like, okay, I got hungry like an hour later just because my blood sugar dropped a little too low. So if you struggle with like polycystic ovarian syndrome or blood sugar imbalances or hypoglycemia, it's probably best to combine the two, protein and a carb. But I've been known to drink some orange juice on an empty stomach. Sue me. You know, like I know when my body's super stressed out and needs some sugar and needs it quick, and I can find that my pulses and my temps completely just relax when I drink, you know, some orange juice. And even if I have to do it alone, I'll do it. So again, it's kind of like really relative. If you find that you're not like healing or you're not seeing progress at that point, then you do want to make it a point to really combine protein and carbs. It should be a habit, but it's not like the freak, like, oh, I drank some juice alone is going to kill you or hold you back. Prune juice for constipation. So prune juice is great. I actually do stewed prunes. So that's actually going to be in the Fully Nourished recipe book as one of the constipation remedies, because stewed prunes are really delicious, first of all, like heck, and then they also really help with constipation. So what you do is you take some prunes and then you're gonna simmer them in some water for like 30 minutes or so until they've filled with water. They're really hydrated, they're really plump, juicy. They're actually really good on like Greek yogurt or cottage cheese or ricotta cheese, like, oh, so good. And then you want to drink the juice and eat the stewed prunes, like 3 or 4, and that to me is way better than drinking prune juice. You're an inspiration. Oh, thank you. Okay, so Instagram's cutting me off in 2 minutes, but I'll finish up. And then if I didn't get to your question, just come live again, because you guys know I can't help myself when I go live for another hour. I'll just go live until I finish your guys' questions. I have Hashimoto's, and I've found that I have developed disordered eating as a result. Your best tips for getting over food fear, especially fruit. Stop following people that inspire food fear. So if people are talking about restrictive eating, even if they don't mean it in that way, like they just make offhand comments about like, oh yeah, I don't eat fruit because it's bad for me, or it has too much sugar, or you're starting to like hear them talk poorly about foods that are actually healthy for you, then you should really unfollow them and get them out of your consciousness. That they're not someone to look up to. They're someone that is probably also struggling with some type of food fear or disordered eating, and so you don't want to be taking advice from other people that are struggling with disordered eating, pretty much. That's the first thing. And then the second thing is start actually learning about your food. What is that food providing you? And great thing Google exists nowadays. You can actually Google, you know, the benefits of certain foods, and you can actually see the vitamins and the minerals, and understanding, like in Fully Nourished, I'm going to explain to you guys, like, you know, for example, B vitamins, they're so important for metabolic function. Like if you want to lose weight, you need a certain amount of minerals and vitamins and nutrients, and we sometimes when we restrict foods, we're not understanding that we're actually restricting the very nutrients that we need to get our body doing what we want it to do. So I think it's really important to learn about your body, learn about your food, and then just slowly start to unfollow anyone, even if they're not bad people in themselves. I'm not saying that they're bad. They just probably don't know how disordered they are anyways. Okay, Lynn, so I will get to your question next. I'll see you guys in a second.